So one morning, the Prime Minister of Canada wakes up and decides it's time for an election. But this isn't just about picking a date and calling the press. No, behind that decision is a series of legal rituals, constitutional traditions, and political gambits that date back centuries. A chain reaction of events with roots in British monarchy and Canadian pragmatism. This video is about Canada's election weirdness. Our country, our world, is changing at an accelerating pace, faster and faster. It may feel disconnected, like hurtling through a maelstrom, but when you peel back the layers, unpack the pieces, you start to see the Canadian connections. The first link in the chain is simple in theory. The Prime Minister decides to call an election because he's lost the confidence of the House, or for strategic reasons, or simply because he can. That's what happened in 2008. Yes, despite Canada's fixed date election law, the Prime Minister can still request an early election. That law, more of a polite suggestion. Stephen Harper did it in 2008, dissolving Parliament just 2 years into a minority government. Legal? Absolutely. Controversial? You bet. And Harper's 2008 move triggered a near-constitutional crisis. A coalition of opposition parties threatened to unseat him just weeks after the election. The Governor-General had to consider whether to let Parliament function or to prorogue it, an event that raised questions about the limits of executive power and the flexibility of Canadian conventions. So what happens next? The Prime Minister pays a visit to the Governor-General at Rideau Hall. It's not just a meet and greet, it's a constitutional moment. The Governor-General is the Crown's representative in Canada, and technically, only they can dissolve Parliament. In rare circumstances, the Governor-General could say no. It almost happened in 2008 when Michaëlle Jean was asked to prorogue Parliament during a confidence crisis. She said yes, but took 2 hours to decide. 2 hours that shook the country. And back in 1926, Canada saw its most famous constitutional crisis, the King-Byng Affair. Prime Minister Mackenzie King asked Governor-General Lord Byng to dissolve Parliament. Byng refused. King resigned, and the political fallout helped define the role of the Governor-General to this day. Once the Governor-General agrees, Parliament is dissolved, and every single MP loses their seat. 343 writs of election, one for each riding, are issued by the Chief Electoral Officer. These are physical documents, still signed and sealed, a ritual from another era upheld to this day. And here's the twist. Each writ is addressed to a returning officer, the person responsible for running the vote in that riding. These folks are appointed years in advance and must be ready to spring into action on short notice. At the center of it all is Elections Canada, a neutral, nonpartisan agency tasked with the enormous job of running a general election. When Parliament isn't dissolved, Elections Canada operates with a relatively small core staff, around 500 full-time employees. But once the writ drops, the agency transforms almost overnight into one of the largest temporary employers in the country. During a general election, Elections Canada scales up to employ over 230,000 temporary workers. These include returning officers, poll workers, office administrators, call center staff, and logistics coordinators across all 343 ridings. They must quickly lease and outfit thousands of local offices, rent voting locations, often schools and community centers, arrange for ballot printing, hire and train staff, and coordinate secure transportation of ballots across the country. And they do all of this on a strict 36-day timeline. Once the ballots are counted and the results certified, Elections Canada faces the monumental task of winding it all down, shutting temporary offices, collecting and securing ballots and equipment, processing payroll, and auditing every riding's expenses. It is a logistical operation of military precision, executed quietly, and largely unseen by the public. And here's a quirk. Elections Canada has to be ready to run an election at any time, even in the middle of a pandemic. In 2021, they had contingency plans for PPE, distancing, and even drive-through voting. And they need to be ready for anything. In 2006, an Ottawa poll station had to be relocated after a local fire alarm forced the evacuation of a community centre. Ballots were carried out mid-count under police escort. Once the writ drops, the campaign begins. Legally, the campaign must be at least 36 days long. And while there's no legal maximum, the longest modern campaign in 2015 lasted 78 days. By the end, even the candidates looked tired. So who decides how long the campaign is? Ultimately, it's the Prime Minister, in consultation with the Governor General, who sets the dates of the election when they request the dissolution of Parliament. The Chief Electoral Officer is then required to ensure that the campaign period complies with the minimum length set out in the Canada Elections Act. That means the Prime Minister effectively picks the duration so long as it meets the minimum requirement. Campaigns are tightly regulated. Spending limits, third-party advertising rules, disclosure laws, all carefully monitored. Every candidate must appoint an official agent and submit detailed expense reports. And then there are the unusual candidates, like the guy who ran in a Star Wars costume, or the Rhinoceros Party, which once promised to repeal the law of gravity, or Ed the Sock, who announced his intention to run for Prime Minister of Canada in 2011 as the head of the new FU Party. Canadians vote in person, by mail, or in advance. And then the votes are counted, but not by machine. Canada still counts ballots by hand, in every riding, in every province. Why? Because it's reliable and fast. Canada typically knows its results within a few hours. But not always. In 1972, Pierre Trudeau's party was returned to Parliament with a small minority of just 2 seats. It took days to confirm the count, and confidence votes hung in the balance for months. More recently, in 2011, Etobicoke Centre saw an election decided by just 26 votes. A court threw out the result. An appeal reversed the decision. The original winner was reinstated, but it was the closest Canada came to an overturned federal election result in living memory. Once the results are in, the Governor-General invites the leader who can command the confidence of the House to form a government. And so the chain reaction finishes. Parliament is recalled, a new Prime Minister, or the old one, returns. The cycle begins anew. So the next time you hear that an election has been called, remember, behind that headline is a hidden machine, a blend of law, history, and constitutional theater, a system built on handshakes and parchment, ballots and broadcast debates, and a lot of work. All because one person made a decision, setting off a weird and wild chain of events. Stay curious, stay engaged.